Hello and welcome to Defence Line, a weekly program on defence, security and more. Usually we discuss issues relating to our armed forces, but in today's episode we move away and talk of the ambiguity on the role and responsibility of the Border Security Force. As the force guarding the borders, is BSF the first line of defence, or is prevention of trans-border crime its main task? Is it okay to use BSF for internal security duties, which often entails mob control? This is what we discuss in today's episode of Defence Line. Joining us for the discussion are Rajiv Anand, a former BSF officer, now an advocate in the Punjab and Haryana High Court; DS Dhaliwal, former DIG BSF; GS Gill, former Director General of Police Himachal Pradesh, who also served as Special DG BSF; and PC Dogra, former Director General of Police Punjab, who earlier had many stints in BSF in Jammu and Kashmir. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. But before we get into a discussion, let us look at this report.
After independence, the protection of India's international boundaries was the responsibility of local police battalions belonging to each border state with little interstate coordination. But the Indo-Pak War of 1965 demonstrated the inadequacies of the existing border management system. This led to the formation of the Border Security Force as a unified central agency with the specific mandate of guarding India's international boundaries. The BSF was the brainchild of IPS officer K.F. Rustamji, who became its first Director General. The BSF's capabilities were used in the Indo-Pak War of 1971. BSF played a very important role in the liberation of Bangladesh too. It is believed that BSF had trained, supported and formed part of Mukti Bahini and had entered the erstwhile East Pakistan before the actual hostilities broke out. More recently, the BSF has, in addition to its duties, been deployed for counter-insurgency and internal security duties. When the insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir broke out in the late 80s, the J&K police and the thinly deployed Central Reserve Police Force struggled to cope with the spiralling violence. Consequently, the government deployed the BSF in the state to combat militants. The BSF initially suffered casualties from insurgent attacks but later saw successes. But despite the BSF's success in the counter-terrorism role, many feel that this additional burden is leading to a dilution of the BSF's mandate and degrading the force's ability to perform its primary role of guarding the country's borders.
We will be in conversation with Mr. Anand, Mr. Dhaliwal, Mr. Gill and Mr. Dogra. Mr. Anand, I'll start with you. Like in the Army, you have the Army Act, and for the BSF, there is the BSF Act. As per the BSF Act, what is the role the BSF is cut out for?
The task of BSF is provided under the BSF rules, which were carved out in 1969, in which Rule 15 specifically lays out the task of the force, which says that it will prevent trans-border crime, entry into and exit from the country. It will also inculcate the sense of security among the people living in border areas, and it will help prevent trans-border crimes and other illegal activities. This is the specific role that is provided for and given in the rules that are provided for the functioning of the Border Security Force.
And this is the act which broadly deals with all cases related
to... Yes, this is a self-sufficient special act which deals with all aspects of service and discipline of the member of the forces who are appointed under the Border Security Force.
Mr. Dhaliwal, you had a long stint in the BSF. How often is this basic role which is indicated in the Act kind of violated?
Well, it is violated quite often, and if we go back little into the history of BSF, there was a time in the mid-80s and 90s when more than one-third of the organization was pulled out from the borders and it was deployed for the counter-insurgency operations in Punjab and Kashmir. So in between around 2000, when the group of ministers that was formed after the Kargil operation, they have also reiterated the same role for the BSF which Mr. Anand has said, and they said one force and one border. That means BSF should guard the borders, which is its primary role, and for the internal security purposes the Central Reserve Police Force was given some additional battalions. Now after that, though the BSF was withdrawn from the Kashmir, now again all the reserve battalions of the BSF, they have been again inducted into left-wing areas affected with the left-wing extremism. Not only that, The training battalion, the training companies in the BSF battalion, they have also been formed into ad hoc battalions, and they are sent for.
So that means they were pulled out and now they are re-inducted again.
They are in the process of being de-inducted. Most of the reserve battalions are inducted in the 3-4 states affected with the.
Right, Mr. Gill, you had a long stint. I think you had more than one stint in the BSF, though you belong to the Himachal cadre. How many battalions or what percentage of the BSF is actually on non-border duties?
Approximately maybe about 15% of the force on a long-term basis. But one aspect of internal security duty none of us is looking at is the elections. Maybe that is the most fundamental democratic function of the country, and we will remain committed to conducting fair elections. But the pressure on the force because of elections is huge.
So that means it is not just border management, it is not just internal security, it is even in the conduct of elections that the BSF is involved.
Yes, and since we don't have a general election, all our elections are staggered. We end up with 4, 5, 6 elections every year, and each election is a process of approximately a month and a half to 2 months because they are staggered over phases. So for two months at a stretch, you have approximately 250 companies of the BSF on election duty.
Mr. Gill, you served in senior positions in the BSF. Does these multiple roles kind of bother you, and have senior officers taken it up with the Home Ministry that this should not happen?
This is a continuous issue between force headquarters and the Home Ministry. And like I said, regarding elections being a very fundamental democratic function, you cannot say no either. And another thing is, I would not say that these duties are violation of the Act. The Act has a provision for the BSF to be deployed on internal security. But it is an overextensive use of that function. We need to keep it to the barest minimum.
That's a very apt word, I think, overextensive use of that provision which is there in the Act. Mr. Dogra, you've been in the BSF, I think 3 or 4 stints I think you had. Was it the same even in those days when you were with the BSF?
Yes, it started with me when I was IG BSF Jammu, and thereafter IG BSF Srinagar. BSF was deployed in a big way in the counter-insurgency operations, and I think that was the need of the hour also at that time. Situation was so bad, and we were already deployed on the border. So when the battalions moved in for the counter-insurgency operations, that was not naturally, not really in the interior, but along the border also. And BSF did extremely well, and BSF intelligence setup did extremely well. You know, at that time, I'm talking of the year 90s, 91 or so, when our intelligence operations had come to a grinding halt in J&K. The militants had actually virtually taken over everything in the Kashmir.
But Mr. Dogra, at that point of time it was supposed to be an exception, the induction of BSF. Now it is more of a rule, isn't it?
No, thereafter now it is becoming more of a rule. The point is this: basically this force was meant for border guarding. It should have remained with that because it is trained for that, the weaponry is for that. We have big weapons also. But it's not CRPF. The difference should be understood between CRPF and the BSF. BSF, yes, we cannot deny it. It is our national requirement. If there is emergency, we have to move.
Mr. Dogra, sorry to interrupt you. Aren't both central police forces?
Both are central paramilitary forces, but the charter of duties should be defined, should be redefined. In the sense, point is this: it will be redefined. It may be redefined. But you can't ignore the aspect of emergency when the nation calls you for internal duty also. We may have to go, but it should be exceptional. The situation should be exceptional, and the way the BSF handled Kashmir Valley at that time, I think it was really exceptional and a wonderful job they did it to the satisfaction of the nation, and we could take honor for that. A few minutes more comparing, I don't sort of pass any kind of no comparison.
Yes,
if the military was deployed, one battalion is deployed for cordon and search, and the BSF is also given the task. You know, my one company of BSF would be on the cordon and search for 24 hours continuously, and the boys never complain. when the battalion was when the army was given the task of cordon and search, the whole battalion will move with one company for 8 hours duty, and they will go
Mr.
back.
Dogra, you are having a field run because we don't have an officer from the army to test you on this.
No, I was there. I was additional DG also there. I'm not talking, anything wrong. I would think, BSF troops are deployed right in the chowk in town, and anybody can come and lob a grenade. They get killed. Claustrophobia was so much in an area of 10 to 15 feet. One full platoon is deployed.
No, Mr. Dogra, we all agree that the BSF has done a commendable job.
The point is that they should not be moved towards now the law and order, like controlling the mob and controlling the examinations, controlling other things.
What is happening now is perhaps kind of affecting the character of the BSF.
Basic character of the
Mr. Anand,
force.
let me come back to you. The multiple tasks now given to the BSF, does that lead to complaints against the BSF personnel? Does it affect the morale of the force today?
No, there are not many reports of violations, and there are not many complaints coming to the courts also, but human rights violations as a whole are coming against the other paramilitary forces and even the army rusted rifles also. So this phenomena of complaints coming and looked under by the process of law are sometimes politically motivated by the interests that are vested and are having domination in the area where these forces are performing their duties. So as a whole, this is overall phenomena against all the forces who are performing their duties, especially in insurgency areas.
Mr. Dhaliwal, now the different roles would require different kind of training. So how is this kind of reconciled in the BSF Academy in Tekanpur? How much time is actually spent, or how much of the syllabi is actually focused towards border management, and how much of the syllabi is focused towards internal security duties?
Well, training policy of the organization is reviewed very often. I mean, it's not a hard and fast training policy. It is being reviewed rather every year, depending depending upon the requirements. Now, though the major focus is on the border guarding, but some, let us say about 20 to 30% the syllabus also deals with the counterinsurgency operations also.
So that change has been made in this
syllabus. That change has been made because when, as I said earlier, that when the big, the bulk of the organization was, BSF was in Valley, that time the major focus was on counterinsurgency operations and about very less on the border guarding, because that was the main focus of the country, that was the main focus of the hierarchy of the BSF. And now the major focus, let us say about 70% is devoted on border guarding and 20 to 30% is devoted on the counterinsurgency operations.
Mr. Anand, are these different tasks that the BSF personnel are asked to perform a part of their pre-induction training, and does that pre-induction training take place in Tekanpur in the BSF Academy?
No, but pre-induction training is usually given in the frontiers where these battalions are inducted, and this is running into a period of about 2 to 4 weeks, where before handing over the charge of the battalion which is to move out, the pre-induction training is granted, and there they tell about the general area and the nature of the movement of the extremists or the insurgents and how they are reacting to certain situations like hardening and other thing. So that way pre-induction training needs to be strengthened, which I feel with my short service. If that is strengthened at the company level, then the role can be further dominated in the area where they are deployed.
Right. Here we will take a short break. When we return, we continue our discussion on the role of the BSF. Welcome back. We are discussing whether